Mama Dele.
Jatu jatu bagu bagu lele.
Mba, mba, mba. Mba, mba, mba. Dudula Mama Dele.
Jatu jatu bagu bagu lele.
Mba, mba, mba. Mba, mba, mba. Dudula Mama Dele.
Jatu jatu bagu bagu lele.
Mba, mba, mba. Mba, mba, mba. Dudula Mama Dele.
Jatu jatu bagu bagu lele.
Mba, mba, mba. Mba, mba, mba.
Hey guys, this is Bosibori Ibonge and Demo. Na bakwane limwense mwamugusi ya seriteri ya Yesu Kristo. Mbiamore. Okay, so I'm here to talk about really the ABAKOSOVA people and the GUSII language. And now I bring forth my argument that the ABAKOSOVA people are a lost tribe of Israel. The ABAKOSOVA people are, without a doubt, I will prove to you that the ABAKOSOVA people are a lost tribe of Israel. And how will I do that? Okay, so I'll show you guys how I'm going to go about this. And I do believe that the ABAKOSOVA are descendants of the tribe of Levi and Judah. Very important tool in using comparative linguistics is I will concentrate on majority of core vocabulary, you know, daily routines, common tools, body parts, time, season, numbers, and pronouns. And you know, daily routines would involve, you know, tools, daily activities, musical instruments, dressing, and stuff like that. So if you're not, if you just want to get to the meat, I mean, feel free to forward and go ahead. So you know, but I'll let you guys know that I may have a limitation, but my limitation is also my strength. So I speak only 2 Bantu languages, which is better than just speaking 1, and I feel that it is my strength, but it may be a weakness because I feel like I would understand more if I knew more languages. So yeah. Okay, so coming from a communication studies approach, and I have to thank Dr. Sachi and her husband, Dr. Brown. You know, they let us know even during communication studies class, because I in and tell them, you know, it's like you can really find acceptance sometimes being that you are, you know, an alienated, you know, kind of hybridized person, being that you have this, you know, you have Western culture in KISII culture. It's like, you know, I'm KISII, you know, I'm an Omogosi, but I have, and we all have, you know, conflicted cultural, you know, worldviews that we've grown up to embrace. Excuse me. And, you know, the truth is that, you know, living in America, you know, when I first came here, I said, you know, I'm not going to change my accent, you know, I'm not going to do that, I'm not going to do that fake stuff or whatever. But then I found out the hard way, because I got tired of people telling me, what was that? What was that? What'd you say? So I said, okay, you know, I just may have to, you know, adjust my English a little. So this is for those Africans that will be, you know, who I grew up with, who will be like, oh, she sounds fake and but you know, when you go to the Romans, do as the Romans do. So hook me up with your wing, my guy. And they get ujawai printer. So ukisikia kaweng, you know, I'm just trying to be universal, bro. I ain't being fake. When I talk about Bantu, I just don't mean, you know, what Greenberg and company had categorized as Bantu. When I talk about Bantu, I cover the Nilotes, the Kushites, and the Bantus, as well as, you know, the Dravidians and the cities, the Aborigines, the African Americans. So I cover a whole vast of the disenfranchised, melanated nations. So if you're African American and you're trying to find an African identity, please cleave on to us, the ABAKOSOVA. Please, you're welcome, more than welcome. And or cleave on to an African language that you may know, because at the end of the day, we are children of the same mother, of the same melanated mother. So when I speak of Bantu, I'm talking about the whole nation of the disenfranchised, you know, amalgamation of melanated nations. Even the Moors are covered, and the Moors were not only Muslims actually, and I'll talk about this later, but the Moors were a combination of just, you know, the whole conflation of black people from Africa. It was a bunch of people, you know, that were not all Muslim. They say, oh, because some people try to imply that it was the Muslim Moors that brought civilization to Europe. No, I don't believe that. And I'll show you evidence that there were Bantus that I don't believe were Muslim, that were Moors. So that whole Moorish culture, I do believe. In fact, a majority of them were predominantly Hebrew, and I'll show you the Hebraic names that I have seen appear in Greece, you know, Grecian stories and laws. So and I pray that from what I bring forth, that the Lord will unite us as a nation, even during these trying times. You know, in this time of, you know, a social upheaval, it's important for us to unite, because we all, black people, whether we want it or not, have inherited the legacy of slavery. So, you know, I have walked into a store and have been judged, you know, as an African American, which is okay, because, you know, not only did this thing happen in, you know, America, that whole thing of racial hatred, it happened also in Africa. Africans were enslaved also in their own land. I mean, please read, you know, Britain's Gulag, I believe. There was torture. It had torture camps and torture chambers. I mean, these colonialists were brutals. They were animals. They were real brutes, no joke. So, you know, and slavery happened, you know, the world over for melanated people, and that's, you know, sentiments that we can all unite so as to bring healing. So even as I bring forth this message, I am not, you know, a Pan-Africanist that would be for segregation. You know, you can help who you love. That's just how it is. But at the end of the day, we need to know where we come from and where we're going as a Bantu nation. When I first had this vision, of course, who do you run and share it with? Your family members. So, I mean, I was so excited, and I realized what the connection was between Hebrew and GUSII, and I was telling, you know, I told my sister, I was like, you know, the one mistake we ever did, you know, was learn Christianity through the English language. I mean, because he brought along a deception. Now, when I say that, my younger sister was like, I mean, she laughed. I mean, I was salty, guys. But I mean, this is what happens. Some people will get what your calling is, and some just won't get it. I mean, it's funny because when I went and told my Aunt Evelyn on Sheba and Uncle William, they were like, oh my God, they were like, you need to start recording that. You need to start writing it down. Then I told my Aunt Angela, and she's like, you need to push it. You need to push for that and start recording it. And then I told my Aunt Josephine. I mean, within a family, there's people who will get it, and there are those who won't get it. because I told my sister, I said, being that I was so salty, and I told her, when I write my book, I'm going to write about this experience. I mean, I was so salty, I went to bed. But, that's just how it is. God always provides people around you that will understand what you're calling it. So if you have something inside you and maybe people around you don't seem to understand, I mean, praise number one, but also find a support system that will understand what your calling is. And my Aunt Angela surprised me how quickly she understood what I was talking about, and she kept pushing me. She's my Aunt Angela, Uncle William, and Evelyn, they kept pushing me, and I'm really grateful for my mom, because at the end of the day, Mother Supreme, she taught me the GUSII language. She gave me that culture. She fed it. And my dad, of course, introduced me to the whole concept of rhetoric and thinking. Aside from the fact that my dad was very traditional and we learned, aspects of KISII culture to him. And my dad constantly taught us, or he'd come to the living room and give us, quizzes, or tell us to, give us challenges to interpret maybe like a word in a GUSII language, and then he'd give us money. So it takes a village to raise a child, I suppose. But this, I am blessed that I had a whole network behind me, of people that pushed me to do this. So I'm grateful for that. I am also very grateful for the ABAKOSOVA resources, GUSII.com, and I believe KISII.com. I'm not really sure, but GUSII.com, for all the work they've put out in relation to the ABAKOSOVA language and ABAKOSOVA people. So thank you so much for the ABAKOSOVA people who've put that ABAKOSOVA message out there. God bless you. And I'm thankful for my spiritual mom and dad, Pastor Mary and Pastor Fatai Olushola Jubril. But so before I go on to the meat of this, I have to share how I was first inspired to start with this. The first time was, when I was going through a lot of, should I say, racist things that were happening around me where I lived. I mean, I had so many racist experiences at one point, and I had gotten to a point where I was so mad at God, and I was just saying, I don't even care for this Bible, I don't really care anymore, because I was going through racism, and really mine was nothing compared to what African Americans went through, or what the Africans went through in Africa with the colonialists and with the Muslims as well, who came on to Africa and pillaged and burnt and killed during the Crusades. But I was going, being a black person, you suffer that, that legacy of slavery, whether you like it or not. It's like a spiritual rest that's put on you, whether you like it or not. But I started questioning God, and I was so mad and bitter at God. So one night I had this dream that I was in Egypt, and it's like I was in this vast building in Egypt. It was tall, but it's like I was it's like I was seated and I was just watching what was happening. And when I woke up, I was like, I mean, the dream was like vivid, but I couldn't remember the details of it. And I was like, that's strange, And so I kind of like shoved it and put it in the back burner. But then, as I kept questioning and asking the Lord, I had this very vivid dream where I saw a tree, and it was all black, or it was black all round, but the tree was like orange, it was an orange tree. And it was beautiful, like the leaves were all like orange and shining like lights. They were like lights. Yes, that's the only way I can explain it. They were lights. However, I noticed something about the foundation of the tree. The foundation had this little, like, small flicker of light, like this small. And then I had a voice tell me that the Christianity, I had a voice tell me the answer is in culture. And then my feeling or my perception at the time was the Christianity I know was in the leaves and the branches, but the foundation was dark because the answer was in culture. So I had to go and find out what that foundation was. So when I woke up, I was like, oh my God, you know, what a strange dream. It was too clear for me to even deny. Anyway, so several months, several months passed by, and then this one time I was just sitting and I said, let me go and look at the, Metonatural language. And when I started to look at the language, I started to understand some of those words that were there, and I was like, oh my God, it's actually a GUSII in Metonatural. So anyway, but I didn't know that the Lord was preparing me for something even deeper and further on down the line. That was just the precursor for beginning the language. And just like in Job, it says, the Lord puts dreams in man and he locks them in. So sometimes God just put a dream in you and he locks the message, and it'll start to unfold as the days go by. And I believe when that's really what. And my first thought was, because I was doing communication studies when I had this dream. So I was in college at that time. So anyway, the most basic concept you have to go to when you're told the answers in culture is find the definition of culture. So I went through and flipped through so many definitions, and I came, so I went through various definitions of what culture is. But I'm just gonna pick one. I'm not saying that this is the best, but I just chose Edward Burnett Taylor. In culture is really a complex whole of knowledge, belief, art, morals, law, and custom, and any other habits and capabilities acquired by man or society. So culture helps us explain the world, and it unfolds the world for us. So in so doing, culture cannot exist in a vacuum. You need a vehicle through which you transport and teach culture. And what vehicle would that be? Language. Okay, so language is a powerful emblem of social behavior, and through language we are able to relay vital social messages. For example, in America, when they say minority, it implies, like, when they say black people are minority, it implies that minority are considered, they are measured in relation to a dominant majority. So if you use language and say minority, you're already implying that there is a dominant majority or a high culture through which, a minority is judged from. And that's how language relays, social behavior. It's a powerful emblem of social behavior. Okay, now, my people, with the coming of the Europeans and Greenberg and company, European anthropologists, they say that they ran from Misri. They came from Misri and they ran away from Misri. And the Kalenjin say they ran away because of the slavery. The ABAKOSOVA say they ran away from Misri. I believe there was war. But as they came down and walked down along the Nile, they eventually ended up in KISII or GUSII. I prefer to use GUSII because that's the more authentic name. So anyway, my father tells me that he does believe that we not only came from Misri, but we came further on up from Israel, because my dad does do research and he has talked to the old men, and he said that the old men were talking to him and telling him how to telling him how to use a dhow, and they were explaining to him about the wind. He was, he told me he was shocked because we don't have oceans in, KISII. We don't have any oceans, but we have small rivers. So, and that's also another indicator that there was, the knowledge was passed on just because it goes by apprentice basis, and the knowledge is passed on between particular families. So the Abagusi have a wealth of knowledge that's still unexplored, untapped, that if we look into, it won't be difficult to find out who we really are. Now, it wasn't uncommon for Israelites to travel into Africa. I mean, that wasn't uncommon. It was very normal for people of Israel, or families from the old Israelites always traveled to Africa, and they called it the Ka or Nka. And in KISII, a Ka is home, and Metoror, Ka is kingdom. So when you say Koendande Nka, means I'm going back home. So I do believe that the Israelites called Africa the Ka, the ancestral home. So Abraham, Jacob, Jesus, Joseph and Mary, Prophet Uriah, these are just the basic ones that I picked out, would run to Africa. And Africa was a place of refuge. And there were many royal, Egyptian families that were of Hebrew descent. I believe that their Man families, Tutankhamun, I do believe, was an Egyptian of Hebrew descent, but they'll never tell you that. So the Abagusi, they say, came from Misri along the Nile into western Kenya. Some Abagusi oral narratives suggest that we came from way beyond Egypt, meaning Israel. Misr is the Hebrew name for Egypt. The Bantu, I call them the Bantu 7 or 8, because they say they came 7 or 8 brothers, and they came along the Nile with their brothers from Egypt. The Kalenjins say they came from a land called Kemet, and that's what Kalenjin used to refer to a country. A country in Kalenjin language is called Kemet. Now, and they called it Kajikta. Now, Kalenjin and Abagusi, we're cousins, basically. I mean, seriously. And there's always been intermarriages between the Kalenjin and the KISII. And I read somewhere that, the Kalenjin and KISIIs that live on the border call themselves Kamama because of the long history of intermarriages between the two. That the intermarriages between the Abagusi and Kalenjin didn't just start in Kenya, but started way back in Israel. Okay, so so based on colonial history and colonial anthropologists, from the information they collected, the Abagusi say that they came from Egypt, 7 brothers. However, they say 7, but there's usually 8. So I don't know, the ancients communicated kind of weird. So I don't know if, like the Abasuba, as they came down, broke off, or I really can't, sometimes I have to research further, because the ancients kind of talked very weird. They were very complex. So we have Omogusi, who was the first brother, and then you have Muragori, who represents the Luya, and you have Otere or Moikoyo, who represents the Kikuyu, Mokamba for the Kambas, Moembu for the Embus, or Motenda for the Tendas, or Mosuba for the Subas, and Momeri for the Meris. Now, I'll show you right there, in a few minutes I'm going to show you the map of how these migrations happened, and how these East African Bantu Israelites are still living in East Africa until today, and have still maintained their language and some parts of the culture. For me, the first indicator, and to somebody else may not be a big thing, but for me, when someone told me that Jews, Orthodox Jews don't mix meat and milk, I was like, bang, that's another indicator that we are Hebrew. Because Abagusi, even the rich ones, like when I lived with my grandmother way back in the 80s in GUSII, I lived with her. for some reason she didn't like it. She didn't like mixing. You can't, like when you eat sour milk and ugali and boga, you could never eat meat together with the sour milk. We just didn't mix it. And it's not because of a poor, it's just Abagusi people just, they don't like it. It's a pet peeve. But you see, these are some of the practices that they maintained coming from Israel, not mixing meat and milk. So anyway, we'll start with what caused or how were the lost tribes created, being that I'm arguing. So I argue that the Bagusi are a lost tribe, but let's see how these lost tribes must have been formed. Now, let's look at Psalm 83, 4-8. It says, "Come," they say, "let us destroy them as a nation, so that Israel's name is remembered no more. With one mind they plot together, they form an alliance against you, the tents of Edom and the Ishmaelites of Moab and the Hagrites, the Bablos, Ammon, Amalek, Philistia with the people of Tyre," and so forth, to reinforce Lot's descendants. Now, this is really the amalgamation of the tribes that colluded to destroy Israel as a nation. Now, we have three principles. There's so many other tribes, but I pick on the three principal tribes, and that would be the Edomites, which are the white tribes, the English tribe, and the English tribe, and the European, the European tribes. Then you have Ishmael, which is the Arabic, nations, and then you have Moab, who are the worshippers of Molech. Now, I was listening to Louis Farrakhan, and I heard him say that he considered Martin Luther King a magician for Pharaoh, and I was like, what? But you guys, let's be honest about this. Those people that sold the Hebraic scribes into slavery were the Islamic zealots, and they pillaged and burnt the universities and any Hebraic literature that would associate blackness with being Hebrew, because it was the Islamic zealots that colluded with the Edomites and the Moabites to sell those brothers onto slavery. So, I mean, I respect, Honorable Farrakhan. I mean, he's a champion in what he does. He's a great orator, but if we want to talk about magicians for Pharaoh, I know who the magicians for Pharaoh are. So, moving on. Now, the Lord does prophesy about the coming of an Afro-Hebraic dark age, because Hebrew really meant blackness at that time, in the ancient times. So you have God's prophecies of an Afro-Hebraic dark age if the Hebrew Israelites did not turn from idol worship. Now, Deuteronomy 28 both affected Israelites in Africa, in Asia, and America. Now, therefore, Deuteronomy 28 affected Israelites both in America, in Asia, in Africa, Europe, the world over. Those of melanated descent. Therefore, in hunger and thirst and nakedness and dire poverty, you will serve the enemies the Lord sends against you. He will put an iron yoke on your neck until he has destroyed you. The Lord will bring a nation against you from far away, from the ends of the earth, like an eagle swooping down, a nation whose language you will not understand. I guess that was English and French and the German and the likes. A fierce-looking nation without respect for the old or pity for the young. They will devour the young of your livestock, and the crop of your land will be destroyed. And that's Deuteronomy 28, 49-51. Now, then we move on to Deuteronomy 28, 65 to 66, and I'll speak about something really important in regards to racial profiling as well. So, among those nations, you will find no repose, no resting place for the sole of your foot. There, the land will give you an anxious mind, eyes weary with longing and despairing, and a despairing heart. You will live in constant suspense, filled with dread, both day and night, never sure of your life. Now look at that verse where it says, there the Lord will give you an anxious mind, eyes weary with longing and despairing, and a despairing heart. Now this takes me back to a very prolific author, W.E.B. Du Bois. He talks about double conscious, where your conscious is so split that you can't really collect your identity together. He talks about this in Deuteronomy. He talks about this, having an anxious mind and not finding rest. And this is really what, African American men have constantly been talking about, racial profiling and that anxious mind. But the same thing happened in Africa too, with the Kipande system, where they put Africans in reservations and then took off the meat of the land. You see, there was anxious minds not only in Africa or the US, but also in places like Asia. Look at the Dravidians and the cities. Look at that oppression. It's really crazy. The African Dark Age involved the dispersion of Israel and losing the amalgamating Hebrew lingua franca and identity. Which then led to enslavement and colonization. So Hebrew or Iburu or Ibri or Ibrit or Oboro, which is Luo, or Eburu or Ibo, which is the Igbo, considered extinct until it was revived in the 19th century, relearning the African Hebraic alphabet as a foreign Edomite language by converts. Now, meaning that the descendants of Esau taught the Hebrew language after we had lost our identity. The Hebrew language was reintroduced and taught as an Edomite language. Edomite descendants now then started to carry on the image of being Hebrew, and that's how their identity was stolen.
Okay, so in talking about Hebrew, we have to discuss and find out what makes a nation Hebrew, right? Okay, so one of the most fundamental principles or covenants would be the Abrahamic covenant. So here we go. The Abrahamic covenant that you find in Genesis 17:10, the Lord said, "This is my covenant with you and your descendants after you, the covenant you are to keep every male among you to be circumcised. You are to undergo circumcision, and it will be a sign of the covenant between you and me." All right. So now in the Hebrew language that's spoken now in Israel, Hebrew Ivri language, the name Ivri means to cross over or pass over, and the name Ivri started, or Ivrit, I don't know how, there's variations of how they call it. So Ivri or Ivrit started as a result of the Abrahamic covenant, where God says they have to be circumcised, and once they became circumcised, they became Ivri, right? Meaning to cross over or to pass over. It also indicated a cutting. That's why the phallus had to be snipped a little to indicate that God had cut them aside from other nations. And now let's see what the similarity is with the GUSII. GUSII, circumcision. Guess what it means? Iburu. Now you have Ivri and you have Iburu. Now note and remember that ABAKOSOVA do not have V, we use B instead. So instead of it being Ivri, it will be Ibru, right? And that's how sometimes phonetic variations happen. We end with a U at the end, and the Ivris will end with an I, and that's what brings on that beautiful fabric of the differences in accents, and the different tribes of Israel all had different accents. Now in the GUSII, Ebururu means a butterfly, Nyabururu means a place of ascension, it's a place actually, and Iruruka means to fly. So the concept of ru implies to fly or to cross over. So if somebody says are they going for circumcision? Iburu, meaning they're becoming Iburu or Hebrew. they are going to undergo circumcision. You say they're going for Iburu now. Initiates of circumcisions are called Vare in Ekeguse language. We call them Abare. Now, people who already who become Iburu, the people of Israel are called Haaretz now, because Ekeguse does not have H. We will substitute that for BH. So Vare Haaretz. See how that goes? And then at the end we gain the letter, and the phonetic conversions happen that way. And that's the beauty of accents, guys. So if somebody says Ngaya Bare Bare, where are they? Initiates, right? So meaning that if you become Hebrew, you are a Haaretz or a Bare, because you become an initiate of the Abrahamic covenant and a receiver of that. So I have to say that for sure the Abagusi, just from that little indicator, Abagusi are definitely an Iburu nation, but we must have lost track somewhere. But I'll explain to you as we go on. Okay, now the name Abraham means father of multitudes, but father of multitudes to me I feel is an incomplete meaning. It's not the deeper meaning of it, because the name Abraham comes from the Hebrew word Afra, so it will become Afram. Before the blessing, his name was Afram, you know, meaning the soil, clay, loam, soil, Afra. Now in my language it becomes Evara, meaning the consonants will change from A, P, H, R to E, B, R, and that's how phonetic variations happen. That's where you have Evra. You see, they say, Gusi will say Evara, which then becomes Ephra. See that? Ephraim. So, Evara, Ephara, Aphraam. That's where the name comes from. Aphra, meaning clay, loam, soil. Children of the loam, clay, or soil. The brown children. Now, and then also remember that Aphra was a name used in Greece to indicate somebody who was prosperous, or also a name used for black women, and I think that's where the name Aphrodite is born out of. Now, the second part of Abraham's name after the blessing kicks in, because his name was Ephraim or Afra, which means father of the loam, clay, or soil, right? Now, Ham is the second meaning, and Ham brings in a variant of that meaning. Ham means black or red or hot or burnt, but I'll explain why the meaning seems to kind of, you know, vary and morph a little, but I'll tell you why. Okay, so now Ham, Chum, Ham means warm, hot, or burnt. Hum or hum is a color is a color or pattern of coloration. Now that would then mean, you know, a child who's light skinned can be called hum. A child, or you know, meaning red, meaning that hum or a color pattern coloration would indicate a mixed child. Now in my language, when somebody is light skinned, we say they're red, omobari, or we say omorabu, they're white. They're whiter skinned. See that? So we either use red or white to describe light complexion, and then black, you know, would be for darker brown skin. So so you have hum and hum, red or light skin, used for sheep and people. The ancient understanding of color variation in complexion different from Western perception of color. It's true, and it ranges from white skinned to light brown to deep brown to a deep brown red. For example, red hair means it's brown red, just like, you know, some races would call brown hair red. or light brown hair would still be called red, or dirty blonde hair would still be called red, because Bantu languages and the GUSII language are very utilitarian languages. We don't have colors for pink or indigo. We use what color palette we have, and our color palette, I want to say, is like 5 colors or something, but I'll talk about it later. So and in some places they say the color hum, in Abarim they say that Jacob got the sheep that were hum, red, and people are like, and one of the persons said that I doubt it would be red people. I argue it could be, because there was because the ancients didn't describe color like we do now, and sometimes when they talk about sheep, they're really talking about humans. Jesus is a shepherd, right? And he became a shepherd of the people. So okay, so then now I'm going to show you the agglutination of how, using various languages, of how cham is pronounced in various Afro-Asiatic languages. And chama means an organization in Swahili. Hama means to move around or unrest or relocate. Then you have hamon, multitudes, many, mixed. Amo, together, mixed. That's a GUSII. When you say toreamo, meaning we're together. Amo. Hom means black, and that would be the Egyptian Torah. And kemuamu or kamuamu would be a dark-skinned person, black, and that's why ham also means black, but it's an indicator of black more towards the red side. And then you have como, meaning together. And then you have com, meaning together. And you have homo, which is Latin. Now, note the difference here. Como is a GUSII, meaning together. And then you have com, Latin. And then you have homo, Latin, meaning man. But in this sense, I believe, because homo comes from the root word red, hom, I believe, indicates, the great, creation allegory. The first man was red. Homo, red man. Hamba, together with, meaning to go along. And the hamba, which is sutu, means together or moving on with. So the concept of hama implied children of a mixed race. Those who, mixed together. Those who are together. Those who are amo, hamo, kamwamu. They're red and black. So meaning that the more Hamitic children were described to be more of red skin, but also Hamitic children got the name red because they allowed their children to pass through the fire, something that was very, anti-Hebraic. So, but then when the blessing kicks in, God says, you become Abraham, father of multitudes, meaning the father of the brown children and the red children who are also black. See that? So Abraham is a combination, really. It's really an allegory of, northern Africa, where the more Hamitic live, and then you have sub-Saharan Africa that carries the more dark-skinned Shemitic population. And I am a Shema, and I'll explain that later. In a nutshell, I would say that Abraham really does, as a collective term would mean then father of the red and the black ones, or father of the melanated ones. That's just simply what it means. That is really the denotative meaning of what Abraham means. But remember that hom or homo covers red man. Now, there are Africans who are of white skin, Caucasian looking Africans, that have never been to Europe, that have nothing to do with Europe, because Africa is the mother. The Amazighs, I've seen pictures of Amazighs, and some of them have like blue eyes and green eyes with very white skin and blonde hair. Africans who have never been to Europe have nothing to do with Europe. And the concept of Hama always implied that redness. So and that population, I feel, represents the white population. So Abrahamic covenant will then in essence cover, you know, both black and white. Now, because the fundamental meaning of what the Abrahamic covenant covered was the melanated children, but under the blood of Jesus, you know, it covers everybody. So, but the initial firstborn meaning was that he was the father of the melanated nations. Father of the melanated nations. Now, remember, you guys remember what I told you about Abraham and where the name Abraham comes from. His name is Afra, right? It comes from the root word Afra, clay, loam, or soil. Now, let's find out what the meaning of Africa is using GUSII and other languages and see how this language was agglutinated and conflated into a language. And that was the importance of Mtunetorora, because a symbol could be understood in Asia or Africa or in the Americas. The beauty of hieroglyphs is that it accommodated all those kinds of accents and all kinds of pronunciations. So Afra, of course, name given to women of black descent, or clay, loam, soil. And the church is also described as feminine. So Africa is kind of weird. It's described as a female, but sometimes as a father also. So it's one of those androgynous continents that I don't really understand, but I'll explain why. Because being born of a second primordial energy, you would have to have both masculine and feminine qualities. But I'll explain that later. Alright, so we have Afra, and then we have Rika. Now, in GUSII, Rika has various meanings. And the first, so it means to write, to count, to measure, to weigh, or to wrestle. Now, and then you have Lika. Now, notice the phonetic conversion from Rika to Lika. Now, that's Hindu Sanskrit. In that Sanskrit, Lika means to write, from the root word that means scratch. And then we have Rika, which is Arabic kind of calligraphy. It's a system of writing. It's in Arabic. And then we have Rika, Swahili. And I want to say there are also other Bantu tribes that have had say Rika. And Rika really represents a cohort of circumcision sets or groups, right? So then Africa as a conflated meaning would then mean Afra, you know, Mama Africa, or the continent Africa, Afra, and there, which represents the African land of the dark man. But it's also meaning that Africa then, to move over to Rika would mean, then it's the brown man of wrestle, the brown man of measure, the brown man of counting, or the brown man of circumcision or edge sets or groups. Now, note this, that when we talk about the mother continent of brown black people, of writing, which is Rika, meaning Africa was known as a place of education. It was a metropolitan educational center in Timbuktu and Egypt, and there were so many other places. So Africa was, you guys believe it or not, Africa was known as a land of writing, Afra, Rika. Now, it was also known as the mother continent or brown land of counting or measure, the mother continent of brown land or brown black land of wrestle, the mother continent of brown black land of circumcision or age sets and age groups. Meaning that, now guys, note, from the third definition where you have the counting, measure, wrestle, and circumcision, brings out the old allegory of Abraham, meaning that God told Afra, right, when he told him to look up to the stars before the Abrahamic covenant was sealed, he said, Afra, can you Rika the stars? Meaning that God, even God was highly aware, using the GUSII definition, God was highly aware that you can't really count the stars. So that's why he used a term like Rika that implied measure as in fluid, right? Which is Rika. Measure as in count. Measure as in write. See that? Write down for me. Can you tabulate the number of the stars? Can you measure? So Afra Rika. And Africa, the last definition being the land of wrestle, I believe, would embody that meaning in Jacob, because Jacob wrestled God, and Jacob was a man of wrestle. So Africa became the continent of wrestle. I mean, is it no wonder we still have wars based on resources? And mainly it's the European nations that are fighting for those resources in Africa. So Africa is the land of wrestle, it's the land of counting, it's the land of age sets and age groups. Now, that whole allegory of what Africa is really represents the allegory of Abraham. And the ancient languages would put this together if only we paid attention some more. Now, I have to say that I believe that the ABAKOSOVA are descendants of the tribe of Levi and the tribe of Judah. I argue that the Ribena dance, we have a dance called the Ribena, and the Ribena, you know, I can't really dance it well, but I know Ribena is usually danced by women during harvest. I mean, during happy times and during, you know, mostly during happy times. This is a dance that embodies the identity of the GUSII tribe, and in my heart of hearts, I do believe that Ribena embodies the female identity of our tribe, and that's why women dance it, to really mark that primordial, you know, second energy. So I argue that the Ribena dance, danced by women only by shaking of their shoulders, is the Ribena dance of contention, that marks Leah's contention with Rael over her husband's affection during the birth of her third son, Levi, Leb, or Lev. So Leah says she conceived again and bore a son, and said, "Now this time my husband will become attached to me, because I have borne him 2 sons. Therefore he was named Levi." Now, a phonetic variation of the name Ribena would then become Libna. Because GUSII does not have L. It would be, so meaning that the alternative pronunciation of Ribena would then be Ribena and Libina. I mean, I'm sure there's varying others, but we'll just go with those primary conversions that we have. Name Libna or Ribna is a constant reminder of the contention between Leah and her husband, but also Libna, from where Laban is derived, showed a contention with Israel, meaning Jacob. So I argue that in this regard, Ribena is still danced by women only as a symbolic representation of Israel being born of a feminine primordial energy, the seed of the woman, and you can find that in Genesis 3:15. Let's start with the Ivri Hebrew description of what Ribna is. So Rib, in the Ivri Hebrew language, means contention, a contest, a strife, a controversy, a dispute, an adversary, a pleading, a litigation, or a quarrel. Then you have Libi. Now that was Rib. Then you have Libi, which is a phonetic conversion. Really, I believe Libi in the Ivri Hebrew language means in my heart. Okay. Now let's go to the second, to the suffix. The prefix was Rib, and Bina would be, that suffix in the Ivri Hebrew language would be broken-hearted, gain understanding, discernment, wisdom, or knowledge. Now, Buna also in the Ivri language would be knowledge, understanding, building, or insight. Now, please understand that when I say in my heart or contention, what that implies is that always pay attention to the condition of something. So if I say Bina means knowledge, it means what is the condition of the knowledge? Is there a contention? Is there a disagreement? Is there an agreement? Is there a kind of building? It's always the condition. So if I say his name was Levi, coming from the Hebrew word heart, then you have to ask, what is the condition? What was the condition of Leah's heart? And Leah says in her heart, she was hoping her husband and her would be joined together. Now, look at the suffix bina. Also, you have the word ben, drawn from the root word to signify the relationship between two parties. And in Swahili, the word baina is used to signify a relationship between two parties. Now, if you combine libi and bina, libi, remember, means in my. If you combine rib and bina, it will be strife, contention. In my heart, gain wisdom, understanding. Means there's a problem with all that. Knowledge, understanding, wisdom, strife. There's strife. So, but if you put libi and bina, meaning in my heart, and bina, it will mean in my heart there's contention, there's broken-hearted, gain wisdom, understanding. So whichever way you go, if you use libi in my heart and combine with bina, you'll get the same meaning. If you use rib, which means contention in the Hebrew language, and combine it with bina, you'll still get the same meaning. And that's how you know that, you know, this language is for real. It's ordained by God. Okay, now let's go to GUSII. Now, what does ribna mean in the GUSII? This is from my research. This is what I found. Now, ri is a prefix to indicate usually time or largeness of something, and bina is used to indicate a contention or contentious cases awaiting litigation, right? Now, buna means to contend or disagree or quarrel between two parties. So then, and then you have the singular version of bina, which would be kina. In the GUSII, Hebrew means singular for a case awaiting litigation. And then kina in the Hebrew language means an elegy or a dirge or a lamentation. And then kina would mean in Hawaiian, it's a variant name for Dina, meaning God has judged. And look how Hawaiian kina and Dina connect to the KISII. And that's, you know, and that's also a very important formula. And sometimes don't worry about where the word comes from, as long as they look alike, take them and compare them. And that's how we will make steps towards finding the proto pre-Babel, the proto language, sorry. And that's how we make steps finding the proto language. So bina would then mean the great contention, the large contention, the heavy contention. So in GUSII and in the Hebrew, ribina have identical meanings. So how can you say that these two tribes were not born of the same mother? Okay. Now the Lemba tribes or the Rembe tribes or Remba tribes, I just want to talk about the root meaning of what the Lemba tribes would mean. Now, I do believe that the Lemba of South Africa are highly related to the Luhya of Kenya, who call themselves the Mulembe people, meaning peace people. And Lemba means peace. So, in my language, we don't have L, we say Rembe, meaning peace or grace. So, Molembe is Luhya, Leba is Ivri, meaning heart, Lebab, Ivri, meaning heart. Then you have Libe, German, meaning love. And love is English, and then Levi comes from the Hebrew word love. And this is really how the word love was formed, from the word lab or leb, the Hebrew language. Not only in German, but also in English, where German you have Liebe, English you have love, and then for Lemba, meaning peace in my tribe, or Rembe, it's a variation. Now, what's another indicator that a nation is, you know, Abrahamic or of, Abrahamic descent? Hebrew. Now, another indicator is that they had cousins called the Moabites. And Moabites were the children of Lot. Lot had these children with his own daughters because they didn't know that there were men available, and they raped their father. And they produced the Moabites, and the Moabites became the worshippers of Molech or Moloch. Now, in GUSII language, guys, guess what? cousins are called Vamuavo. I've always found this term very curious because the term carries, a denotative meaning of, those who are a part of us but really belong to them. That's what the name is, Vamuavo. Those who are us but belong, those who are part of us but belong to them. So, Aramaic, meaning that in the GUSII language, Ba represents, the children of a patriarch, and Moabo means, cousins, means the cousins. So in Aramaic, the name would then become Moaba, not different from GUSII. GUSII is Moabo, Aramaic Moaba. Now in the GUSII we have Moabo or Mobo, meaning their domicile, and then you have the word Mabu, meaning their reign, and you have the term. So it's possible that the term Moabo may have come way before the word Hebrew or Hebrew, or they came along the same time. I have to go and confirm and see that. But the various pronunciations would then be, in the Hebrew language, it comes from the root word me and me. And me means what, and me means who. So in the Hebrew language, it will be me, me. Who, what, father? Meaning who, what? Their father, But in GUSII, I have to show you how that would be. It's so cool. Now, Moab, the first part of Moab, Mo, comes from the GUSII word Amo, meaning together, and Abo means a patriarch, meaning those who are together with their patriarch, those who became one with their father patriarch. So, Amo, Abo. Now, when kisses are gossiping, this is how they'd be. Hey, moi boy. But so, meaning they are one with their father. So because we use father would be Esau, so let's replace that with Abo, because I've had many other Bantu languages called father Abo. So Amo, Abo. See how that was born? Now, and you don't want to be around gossiping kisses because they be, oh Lord. Yeah. So anyway, let's move on. Now, Moabites were the worshippers of Moloch, okay? And the Moloch is the root Hebrew word coming from the word ruler or king. The god Moloch was worshipped by the Moabites. Now, the phonetic conversion, I'll show you the phonetic conversion of Moloch. Now, from Moloch will become Molochi, right? And then with a K, and then Omolochi with a CI. And then it can become Molro. Replace that L with an R, Morogi, right? And then you have Moroki, Mologi, Mrogi, Swahili. Now, Omorogi in my language is the name for a witch, meaning she or who belongs, meaning a person who belongs to Moloch, or Moloch. Moloki, Omorogi, meaning one who belongs to Moloch. And then, so Mrogi would be Swahili. And Malogo is also another Swahili term, which would Malogo or Maloko. See how the phonetic variation would be? Malogo would then be, the concept of witchcraft or witchcraft paraphernalia, right? Malogo. So the name, so GUSII language and the GUSII and Swahili all have the same name for Moloch. It's pronounced differently, and that's the beauty of phonetic conversion and accent. And this is how you kill a rat. Now, and guys, I know there's, guys make fun about, KISIIs, I mean, there's been so many stereotypes about witchcraft and the ABAKOSOVA people, and there's been so many witch burnings, but they're stereotypes that follow a certain tribe, not because they're lies, but they're true. So we need to abandon, we need to get rid of those old gods that caused us to be scattered to where we are today, and abandon that worship of Moloch. Guys, for real, seriously, like, this is serious. We need to abandon the worship of Moloch and our love for Moloch, because our love for Moloch brought us where we are today, you know, dissipated and derelict. But we are rising up. So guys, wake up and leave Moloch and see what the Lord will do for the ABAKOSOVA people. Okay, so guys, remember the first part of the slide where I talked about the slave trade confederacy and the three principal tribes, which is the white tribe, European tribes with the Edomites, and then you have the Ishmaelites, the Arabic tribes, and you have the Moabites that would not be limited only to Africa, but a bunch of them were in Africa. They still are anyway. So the Moabites are the worshippers of Moloch, the Morois, meaning the African pagans who colluded with the Ishmaelites and the Edomites to sell their Hebrew brothers, because the enemy of my enemy is my friend. See that? And that's exactly what they did. So when they say Moab, they're talking about the Molochis, the Morois, the Malogos, those who gave up their brothers. Let's talk about the concept of children in the Ivri language and the Buru language. Now, in the Hebrew language, the name Abana is used to refer to believers, the children of the house, the children of Bayit, the children of the house of God. Now, Peter says in 1 Peter 2:5, he says that you are all as living stones, which living stones being Abana, are built up a spiritual house, a holy priesthood. So Peter says that we are all living stones fitted together, and living stones are called Abana. And the children of Israel, as believers, were called the Abanas because they were the stones that build up the Bayit, right? Abana is also a river in Damascus. Now, in GUSII, guys, the spiritual name of Hebrew children was transferred. We carried with us. We're the one we called Abana. The ABAKOSOVA called children Abana, right? Now, it's not only the ABAKOSOVA. We have the Kikuyu, we have the, you know, the Kenya 7, the Kenya 8, all call the children Abana. There's variations, there's Shana, there's Skana, but still it comes from the root word Abana. Now, the singular for Abana is Omwana, right? Now, in the Hebrew language, they would talk about the Oman children, the children of honesty. Now, when you become, but it's written as Aman but pronounced Oman. If you add an A, it becomes Omana. Okay. Now in GUSII, a singular for a child is called Omwana, and plural will be Abana. Now, and this is where the children of Oman or Omwana become the backbone, and this is how. Now, the word Aman or Oman in Hebrew means truth, belief, faith, or support. Backbone. Now, Omana, again, will then translate in the GUSII language also and become Amaene. It becomes truth or honesty. And Ken is singular. Or state of being truthful, sorry. And Ken in Hebrew would also mean honest, affirm, upright, support, correct, or right. Now, in Swahili we have Imani, meaning faith, belief, or trust. And then we have Arabic, meaning Amin, faith, belief, or trust. And Hebrew you have Amun, who I believe is the God of truth, foundation, pillar, support, or backbone. But I'll explain that later. But the concept of the children of the backbone are the Oman Abana. or the Amana, Abana, depending on where you come from and how you pronounce. The children of the backbone are the Amana, Abana. Oman, Abana. Guys, let's talk about this present convention that GUSII was definitely a progenitor biblical language. I don't know how to help you, but anyway, let's talk about buying and selling the marketplace. Okay, how about that? Now, agora in the Hebrew language means payment, and we can see that in 1 Samuel 2:36. 2:36, I'm sorry. So 1 Samuel 2:36. And then you have agora. This is Greek, meaning a marketplace, or which implies buying or selling. Now, then we have gora. In GUSII language, gora means to buy goods and services. And then agorazo, used in the Bible, means a payout or a buyout, used in the Bible to describe Jesus Christ paying the ransom for our sins. 1 Corinthians 6:20 and Galatians 3:13, guys. So how did such a primitive tribe end up having vocabulary that Grecians claim is their own, that white people claim is their own? This is because, you know, following on with what the ancients said, they say we came from Misri and we came even further up, which is Israel, because the language does not lie. So moving on. Now, I'm going to talk only today, because we don't have too much time. I'll only talk about the first two letters of the Hebrew alphabet and how they're born from the GUSII language. Okay, so now the first letter I'll talk about is Aleph or Alp, which is symbolized by a bull. Now, I'm assure you the ancient Semitic is just, you know, it's very rudimentary. It's a bull, and also, you know, it's also the Aleph that was used in Africa with Torah, which I believe is a very Bantu language. Like, pisses me off, makes me mad when I hear people saying, oh, in Turkish this is what it means, but we're the mother. Shouldn't you be going this other way? So anyway, now let me show you the variations of how Aleph was born. Okay, now this is just my thinking. So we have Aleph in the Ivri, means a bull, a father, a ruler, or someone mighty. Then you have Aleph Phoenician, ox head, derived from Egyptian hieroglyphics. And then you have Alpha, which is the first letter of the Greek alphabet. Alpha, or first letter of the Greek alphabet, that also implies father, that means father. Then you have Aleph, Arabic is the first letter, or Aleph. And then you have Yarab, who is the father of all Arabs. And see how the concept of Yarab and Aleph really connect. Now, you'll see it better if I put Kalenjin underneath there. Now, look at the Kalenjin meaning of it. I put it in red because we the same franchise, bro. Okay, so Arab, in Kalenjin, people say it means son of. It doesn't really implicitly mean son of, but what it means is that it's the son whose father is. Arab points to father. It means, you know, son whose father is. So Arab. But then see how if we take out the R and replace with an L, what do you have? You have Aramaic, Alap. Bro, no, that's Arab. And then if you replace that L again, you have Alap, Syriac. Now, I do believe the Kalenjin, and I've read in millions of articles that the Kalenjins were mixtures. You know, the military tribe in Israel, Sabaeans and the Midianites, and they intermarried with the Ishmaelites. That's why Yarab and Arab sound so similar, and Aramaic and Syriac, because according to Dr. Sambu, that's I'm so proud of him, because I think he's the only African Egyptologist I know. Arab Sabu says that he believes that the Kalenjin are a lost tribe of Israel, and he's one of the people that awoke that in me. When I read this article, I was like, oh my God, I have to pray about this. And sure enough, I mean, more than ever, Kalenjin have been a very important part of the Bible and the Torah as a whole. But I'll explain that later. In fact, there's a book that's dedicated to just Kalenjins, or the concept of being Kalenjin. But I'll explain that later, and that's a book in the Bible. I'll explain that later. Okay, so now Aleph is derived from its parent root, El. And what's El? El is really the bull combined with the letter Lamed that implies a form of rulership, or a governorship, a kind of rulership anyway. So then El is a combination of Aleph and Lamed, making it El. It means a ruler, a strong one, a mighty one, a preponderant one, exalted. And most of all, it's the name of God. It means first, it means a champion. I mean, there's very meanings of El, but it usually signifies, you know, that preponderant strength, masculine energy. Now, when we undergo, remember I told you KISII does not have an L. Now we replace that L with an R. What do you have? Eri, right? From the concept of Eli, Eri. Now, Eri in GUSII language is a bull, guys. It's a bull. It doesn't even change. No joke, doesn't change. Eri is a bull. Now, it means first, it means a champion, it means a preponderant one, a strong ruler, same as the Ivri language. Now, if somebody tells you, like, say, when you win a wrestling match or you win a court case, they'll be like, man, aye ne ritata, meaning you're a bull, you're strong, you're a winner, you know. And that's how, you know how sometimes language, and that's the beauty of language, you know, the accents and how it changes. But the accents, you know, in a way worked against us because they were used to mentally distance us, so that you never think you were Hebrew because you said Eri. You would never connect El and Eri connect together. But that's why I'm here today, because the ABAKOSOVA have to wake up. It's important we do. And it's not only ABAKOSOVA, because I can't talk about ABAKOSOVA. ABAKOSOVA didn't exist as a vacuum. We exist, you know, is the beautiful fabric of what the Bantu tribe is, you know, all over the world. Now, I do believe that the ABAKOSOVA are the proverbial daughter of the oath, or God is 7. It's just a name given to girls. This name is always given to girls. Elizabeth, Bathsheba, or Sheba. These are names given to women in the Bible because they imply something mighty or powerful about this daughter. So I'm going to show you how. Now remember that KISII, I firmly believe that KISII are descendants of Bathsheba. Bathsheba was a Gilonite because her father was a Gilonite, and Gilo was a territory of Judah. So now there's number one in that KISII, that is the Judite belonging of the ABAKOSOVA people, but I'll show you how. Although I do believe that Bathsheba may have been from Gilo in the territory of Judah, but was of a Levitical tribe, because Levites lived on the borders. And what better noble cooperation could there be, or collusion, you know, as when the Leviticals and the Judites might. That's the noble. That's the noble in the priesthood. I mean, that's like super high culture right there. So let's go on. So, who's the daughter of the oath? She's the daughter of God's dispersed people beyond the rivers of Cush. I argue that really, like, most of the countries, like in sub-Saharan Africa. And you know, just right behind the rivers of Cush, guys, is Kenya. Right there, right there. So She is the daughter of dispersion or abandonment. Now, Shub or Shuba or Seba means captivity or abandonment in the Hebrew language. And then you have Zuba in Chinese. It means let's go. So you can let's go. So you can collect together, or you can let's go in terms of abandonment. And the daughter of returning. Now, when you say Somba, it means to collect together. Soba, to collect together. Now, these are different variations of the meaning to collect together. And then Soba, even the word Soba in English means to collect together from a disoriented state. That's why I put in English words, because if Africa is a mother, we gave the world its language. That's why I put in English here, even though it's not really a Bantu language. So, and then Messiahs have a greeting that says Soba, and they reply Eba, meaning so Shobab, they're returning, and Eba to becoming Hebrew, which is really down there. Eba is spelled E-B-E-R or Eber, however they pronounce it. So I'll show you how the concept of Shuba or Shabbat or Shaba is used in all these names. So now let's talk about how Elizabeth was formed. Elizabeth is a combination of the consonants L and SB or SHB, which is the name El, God, Eli, plus Sabbath, meaning God is seven or God is my oath. You get Elizabeth, and that's the Ivri derivation of the name Elizabeth. However, in GUSII, let's see how this name becomes Elizabeth. Now, the name, like we talked about, the name Eri means God, which would be the variation for the name Eli. Now, Mosubati is a daughter. Mo is a prefix for something or someone. Use the suffix subati alone here, because Mo is just a prefix to indicate that something or someone has a soul. Now, Eri is God, and then plus Subati, what you get? Eri Subati. Now compare Elizabeth and Eri Subati. No difference at all. In fact, the consonants remain the same. Only where you have in Hebrew you have LSB. In GUSII it would be RSB. But when they used hieroglyphs, it didn't matter if it was an R or an L, as long as the symbol was seen. Even a scribe from the Dogon tribe looking at a hieroglyph would know what that meant, because the beauty of Metronome Torah is that it accommodated accents. Accents were not a funny thing like we see today. I mean, anybody who's lived in the West knows how. When you talk, people think it's so funny. I mean, they be laughing at all. But, you know, African language had learned to conquer that that border of accent and language using hieroglyphs. Now, let's talk about the name Bathsheba. Now, I'll show you how Bathsheba is produced in GUSII. Now, but we have to pig Latinize it, and I'll tell you why. Now, look at this. Now, pig Latin would be an example. For example, the word Latin would become a tinle or tinle. And in Swahili Sheng, when you say Beshtiango, it means my friend. But in pig Latin would then become Stebenguya. See that? So, Bathsheba, who is the daughter of the oath, is a combination of Bath and Sheba, the prefix Bath, and the suffix Sheba, producing Bathsheba, an agglutination of Bathsheba. Now, if you take the suffix if you take the suffix Sheba and interchange and make it a prefix and make Bath a suffix, what do you have? You have Sheba Bath. So remember Sheba Bath. But I'm just try and memorize that. So, but I'll show you why I'm doing what I'm doing. So, like we talked about, Musubati's daughter, we're just going to use that suffix that just indicates that it's daughter, that the word. So we'll take the two, the combination. Now this is how Subati is formed. You take Suba, which is the consonant SB, plus Bati, and you have Suba Bati. Okay, now because to make talking easy, just like all of us, to shorten it becomes Subati, which is then Musubati. So it's born from the word Suba plus Bati. So now if you take Subati, Su plus Bati, where you find Subati, if you take Bati, you know, the suffix Bati, and make it a prefix, so it becomes Bati, and then Su becomes a suffix, it will become Batisu, which is really a variation of the name Bathsheba, meaning daughter of opulence. And then take Suba and Bati, Suba Bati, and you do the same thing and interchange it, and you will have Bati Suba. Now look at the similarity between the GUSII, Bati Suba, and Bathsheba. So I think it was really a clever scribal way of coding the name Mosubati or Subati. It was coded in a pig Latinized way. I don't know if it was purposely done to hide it. I don't know, or to hide the tribe until such a time as now. I don't know. But now if you compare Batisuba and Bathsheba, they're really one name, and the consonants remain the same. So therefore, now remember the original Subabati, and then now we combine with Sheba Bat of the pig Latin for Bathsheba. Look, Subabati, Sheba Bati. Is there any difference? No, it's just a phonetic conversion. There's a variation in an accent. And really, and in my heart of hearts, I believe that Bathsheba, Sheba, Elizabeth are all born from the KISII language, and this indicates that we are the daughter of the oath. I don't care what anybody says. I don't need anybody else telling me, because the language doesn't lie. The language doesn't lie, and God doesn't lie. For even just combining the consonants R and SB or L and SB, Risubati, when you're talking to somebody, or Erusubati, when you're talking to somebody, says Yani Nara Erusubati, meaning a mighty woman, a strong woman, a woman of power. And really Israel was, the bride of God. Erusubati, that that nation that God had blessed. Erusubati, Elizabeth, daughter of the oath. Now I argue that in fact the name Chebet is a variation of the name Elizabeth or Sebet. Really, that's really what it is. And I believe that Kibet is a condition of being the daughter, which is Kibet. And again, Dr. Sambu is very instrumental in having influenced me in this area. I mean, he's done tremendous work that I can't even deny. And I'm seeing many other Kenyans like talking about Dr. Sambu. So I'm grateful for people like him. Now let me show you the GUSII derivation of the name Emmanuel. Okay, now, but we'll talk about the Hebrew version first. But I'll tell you guys, the name Emmanuel in my language is pronounced like I say, we don't have any L, so it will be Emmanuel. That's how I've had them pronounce it. They say Emmanuel. So, but let's first start with Emmanuel here with the Hebrew version. Now we'll start with the first syllable, Im. Im means, in the Hebrew language, means with, and then Uma means family, and El means God, meaning God who is with us, as a family. That's what the name Emmanuel means. Now, Emmanuel in my language comes from the word, I believe. So now, Emmanuel in the GUSII now would come in and will do the first. Let's do the first syllable. Ime, which then would be im or ime, which then would be in the GUSII, ime means inside. Immanuel means inside you, plural. And then eri means God. Now, as we had earlier discussed, so ime enu eri means God who will live inside you. So, but we still have another agglutination here. Now, look at the name Emmanuel. Emmanuel. We're still talking about another meaning of Emmanuel. What's the second meaning? Emmanuel is a lamb, and Eri is a bull or God, the preponderant one. Now, Emmanuel, which makes Emmanuel, as they call it, Lamb of God. So then that means the combination of Emmanuel in a GUSII would mean then mighty Lamb of God who lives inside us. About Jesus' main purpose on earth. What was Jesus' main purpose? What was Jesus' main purpose on earth? Let's look in Mark 2:27. He says, when the woman, the Canaanite woman, came to him and asked, "Master, will you heal my child?" And he said, you know, and Jesus says, "I am not sent but unto the lost sheep of the house of Israel." So basically, Jesus was trying to provoke her to see if she would be discouraged, but really he was trying to bring out her faith. But I mean, it's sort of comes out as an insult. Yeah, but you know, he says, you know, and the woman says, "But even dogs eat scraps from their masters." And the Lord says, you know, "I will heal you because of your faith." Now, the house of Israel would be Bet or Bayit Israel. Now, remember the Hebrew word for Bayito, my people Israel, Israel. Now, let's see who Bayit Israel is. Now, we'll talk about Bayit and the second letter Bayit. Okay, which people say is Bait, Bet, Beth, Bayito. I say Bayito because that really is relevant to me, and it's the second letter of the Afro-Hebraic alphabet from which the church was born, and it's the second primordial energy that represents Israel. So, Bait comes from the Afro-Asiatic root meaning members of the household called Bayit. Bayito. Now, in a GUSII and the Hebrew Ivri, it carries the root derivation of the words people or members of a household or daughter. So, Bantu, Bayit, Bet, people, and daughter, you know. So, Bieto would be inanimate belongings, meaning the economic output or economic potential, and Bayito is also an GUSII expression of happiness. So I have my Auntie Gemma likes to say, she always says it so nicely, but it's an expression of to show happiness. A GUSII bait, you know, Hebrew bait, vet, however you know you want to pronounce based on your accent. Now they say Bayit, I say Bayito because the word is still being used today, and people say Bayito, you know, to express happiness. So Bayito means members of a household in the Ivri and Hebrew language, meaning that these languages again were born of the same mother. Bayito, Bayit, together, members of a household. Now remember the Zulu greeting Bayete, you know, is one of the most it's considered an honorable greeting for the king when they say Bayete Nkosi. Now Bayete for me implies the big house, he who owns the big house, you know, the big ruler. or long live, invito, bayete, you know. So, and by it carries the concept of living or abiding under a governing social body with Utu as a philosophy. Utu is a philosophy. Now, meaning that by it carries the concept of living or abiding under a governing social body with Utu as a philosophy. So, meaning that Utu, Ubuntu, Ubuntu, Uvando, Vando, mean it comes from the name, it comes from the Bantu derivation of people. So there is no way Hebrew would be a white man's language if it's born of a second primordial energy and born of an Utu or Bayitu, my people, the Utu kind of philosophy. And this is why in my heart of hearts I believe the language was stolen from us. Guys, we need to awake and and take back our language. We can't talk about Bayit without talking about the life force of the Bayit. Now, the life force of Bayit is the Ruah. Now, what is Ruah? Ruah is the Holy Spirit, and it's the Hebrew language for the Holy Spirit, so it's pronounced as Ruah or Ruach. Now, Ruah, the Holy Spirit, or a wind. Ruah in Tiberian also means the Holy Spirit. Now, the word Ruah, therefore, does not denote. Now, I like the description Abraham gives, guys, and the word says, the word Ruah, therefore, does not denote the air moving. It primarily denotes a collective movement by a general driving force. Now, let me show you how this word translates in KISII. Now, in KISII, Ruah means a movement or direction from which a person or a thing is coming from. So, if someone says, Ngayo Korua, it means where are you coming from? Ruah, direction of movement. Right? Now, how can you say that Ruah, how can you say, just from the definition of Ruah, how can you say that KISII is not a Hebrew language? I feel you would be real crazy if you didn't believe that. I'm sorry. Now, we can't talk about the Ruah because he's the vehicle through which God poured his spirit upon us and sent forth his son. You can't talk about Ruah without talking about the Torah. So, Torah, the Hebrew definition of Torah is divine or human instruction. You can find that in Proverbs 1:8, Psalm 7:8, Isaiah 38, Jeremiah 9:12. It also means a law or a legislation, and you can find that in Exodus 16:28 and Joshua 24:26. It also means caststones or manna, found in 2 Samuel 7:19, and you have rain. It also, the word Torah is related to rain. They say it's an archaic term for rain. I don't know. So, word related to rain, but could also control rain, and you find that in Isaiah 55:10-11. And that's retrieved from Abraham. So I really like Abraham because of how they expound on the, you know, the Hebrew language. Now, in KISII, I'll show you how the word Torah was born. Now, a Torah in KISII, a Torah means to speak forth words. Now, Torah means salvation. Torah or Torah means salvation, or to be saved, or be removed off of a yoke, or to remove off of a yoke off of someone, or a burden. Then Torah is to remove a load from someone's head, and Torah means to sleep. Torah means to awaken from sleep. Torah is rain. Terra is sing. Tara is walk or stroll or a portal. Nyamataro is the place of roads. Now, from these definitions, guys, let's just do a little exercise, and I'm going to do some code switching, you know, thanks to my communication studies class. Yeah, Dr. Santi, hey! So, anyway, in the beginning was the word. Now, let's look at John first and see how the Torah becomes, you know, let's see how. Okay, let's look at Torah. and we'll look at John 1:1 and see how God's word became God using the GUSII language. So I'm going to use English, but I'm going to code switch and put in Torah where there's words, right? Okay. So in the beginning was the word, and the word was with God, and the word was God. That's John 1:1. Now let's do this now in the GUSII version, but we're going to code switch here. In the beginning was Torah, and Torah was with God, and Torah was God, and God is omotoria, meaning the word then become from Torah or Torah in a GUSII. Torah changes to omotoria, born of the same root, meaning the words became salvation. You can find this meaning anywhere other than using the GUSII language. That's why I believe GUSII is very fundamental in understanding Hebrew as a lingua franca. Now then, I'm going to take on what the GUSII has brought in terms of the Torah, the meaning of the Torah, what GUSII has brought in, and add on to the initial description of what the Hebrew language would be. Then it would be instruction, law, legislation, customs or manner or reign, okay? Meaning that in a nutshell, when you encapsulate all this, they all come from the mouth of God. I mean, they're all words. I don't care if you put them like as instructions or the bottom line is Torah means words. The word of God. So then now we'll have the various definitions of Torah, and from all these languages that I'm just going to put in, just random languages, if you combine and have a picture of what Torah is, you'll have a picture of how God's words were. They were shaking and they had force because they Torah. Okay guys, now I'm going to talk about Torah derivations from just random languages, and once we have all these definitions, you'll start to have a clear picture of how God's words must have been trembling, and they came out as rain, and they caused life to rise up. I'll show you guys how. So anyway, Katorah in the Babuja language means to remove this load off my head. Keturah means incense in the Hebrew language, and that was Abraham's wife, the godly wife of Abraham after Sarah. Means to rise up in terms of incense rising up, because incense rises up and absolves of our sins, because it's sweet smelling to the Lord. And then you have Klora. Now, if you want to have an idea of how Klora sounds or feels like, you should watch Soli Malango and Keken Fofolo in the song Maria Konyana. Maria Konyana, I believe. Now, Klora means to shake off, shaking off. And then Pandora, remember the Pandora's box was a box where somebody went and released the contents of the box, and guess what happened? Things arose from the box, meaning they went out. Then you have the concept of Doror, liberty or salvation. That's Ivri. It comes from the root word Torah. Again, salvation. Now, Dai Toro in Japanese is an elevated light from the ground. It's a platform lamp used in Buddhist temples. Now, Toro is a Japanese name meaning penetrating or one who travels on foot. And then you have Mtaro Swahili, which is a canal or drainage furrow. And then you have Mtaro, which is also a canal irrigation furrow through which water passes. And then you have the concept of Mdune Terror. Terror, the word terror comes from the word Torah again. And I believe that that's why I believe the Torah was written in Mdune Terror first, or Metune Terror first. The Terror comes from the Kalenjin word meaning a mountain. And the mountain implies it is exalted. And then the name Victoria means victory, but remember that salvation also means to be delivered from harm or loss. So if you guys fight and you have a deliverance during a war, then what happens? You not only got saved, but you were victorious. And those words can be used interchangeably. The English word Victoria does come from the GUSII root word Torah, means salvation. Hello. Now, let's talk about the Sabbath and derivation of Sabbath. Now we'll look at Matthew 2:27. And he said unto them, the Sabbath. Now Jesus says this to the people in Matthew 2:27. He says, and he said unto them, the Sabbath was made for man, and not man for the Sabbath. Now, I tried to find out, the derivations for the word Sabbath, and some people say Shabbat. It just means, a cessation or to break off, and then Shub means to turn back from evil. Although I think that there are various implicit meanings that have to do with the number 7 and the concept of Bath, which is a house, or Bayit, just like we talked earlier, from the second alphabet, meaning Bayit, the house. However, let's look at the GUSII derivation of Sabbath. Now, Sa comes from the root GUSII word Aseh, meaning a place or a fire, spirit, or life force, in the sense that when you say in double se, meaning illumination. So Ashe is life force in Yoruba, and Aish is spirit fire. See, so God made man, and he put Aish in him, meaning he became a fireman, meaning he had a spirit. So spirit is always described as an energy, as a fire, as a life force. Now, in the GUSII, Saba means to pray, Saba. Now, to cleanse is Saba. Now, notice how the number 7 is used. And then, Saba also means to beg. So, it could mean pray, cleanse, or beg. Now, Bayito comes from the root word, Bayit, meaning members of a household. So, Bayit, Enveito, and Vamento all means Bayit. Now, if you combine Sa, meaning a place, and Bayito, you have Sabayito. Now, if you use the Sutu word for people, Batu, you have Sabatu. Look at that. So it doesn't matter what people say, Shavat, Shavut. I don't care how they pronounce it. Israel did not have one accent, and the concept of standardizing language to one accent is a very Western kind of thinking. There is no way that Israel had almost 12 languages and, I don't know, 2 sub languages, and they had one way of pronouncing Shabbat. Even people who speak Sheng don't pronounce Sheng words the same. Come on. It's a misconception. It's a deception. So we have Sabayito, Savanto, Saveto, Saweto, Sabato. And that's how the name was produced. So I'm going to put the agglutination for the word Sabbath using various languages. Let's now cover the agglutination for the word Sabbath. Now, I'm going to show you the various, I'm going to use Swahili and all of the, just random languages. So we have Saba, which is GUSII, like I talked about, pray, ask, beg. And then you have Saba, place of the people, GUSII, when you say Sabanto, place of the people. And then Isaba means to cleanse yourself in GUSII. Saba is Swahili 7. And then now let's go to the word, the suffix, which will be bath, or batu, or bati. Now, batu means people in Soto. Banto or Bayito or Bieto means people or members of the household. Binti is daughter in Swahili and Arabic. And then Watu Batu are people, especially Congo dialect, and Rwandese have had used B, Batu, Watu. Then Vandu, Kandu, Sandu. This word, I know Louis had a couple Vandu, but there's different dialects and different pronunciations. And this, and I'm using these languages so that they reflect upon other Bantu languages that seem similar. And then you have Bati, daughter. And I know in the Hindu language, I think they'd say Beta, I think, to mean daughter. Yeah. So anyway, the combination really means a place of prayer, 7, place of worship, place of the people, place of members of the household. So Sabantu or Sabatu or Shavat all come from a very second primordial energy thinking. It's the two concept, the Batu concept, Ubuntu concept. So we as Bantu people, we as Bayits, are born from that Ubuntu concept of belonging, of being, very socialistic. It's a very collectivist, socialist culture. Now, the concept of Ubuntu is very socialist, collectivist. So, how then can you have a social collectivist culture being propagated by people who practice individualism, saying that it was their culture? And this is how language is stolen. When you use white images, you poison the whole thing. You corrupt it. So we need to take back our language now that we know the truth, now that you know the truth. So let's talk about the knowledge of good and evil, guys. Okay, so in Ivri, good, ready, amiable, delectable, or the concept of consummation means consumption. It's the word retop. Now, retop ra would then mean evil. Now, in Ekerusi, when we say, now notice, retop, KISII will be chin top. Again, we don't have V would replace that with the B, although there's dialects that do. I've had say Musvati, they kind of have a V, they're dialects. So I can say we don't have it because I can't speak for all KISIIs. I'm just the KISII I am, as coming from my clan, and I'm a KISII who was experienced, what I have experienced. So I can't speak for all ABAKOSOVA people. So anyway, so retob means ripeness. So if somebody tells me means are they ripe? Now toba means to be ripe. It's good to eat, it's ready, it's good for use. Yeah, like sometimes I've had boys say, hey, that deal, that deal has gone through, it's ready. So now in Ekerusi, the word for evil, guys, does not change. It still remains rito. Chin tobu, tobu, depending on what you're saying. Now, so chin tobu or tobu is still the same. So the word for good and evil in Kerusi is the same. So you can say tobu good or tobu evil, depending on how you talk. Now, in the Hebrew language, if I notice a slight difference with evil, they put ra at the end to imply they have seen, they have known. Now for us in the GUSII language, to look or to see is ro ra. So if you were to add that, it would be chin towu rora or chin towu ra. It's just the same thing, only they added a ra in the Hebrew language. But for us, evil and good have the same word. And that's why more and more I'm convinced the GUSII language is one of the progenitor language that shaped that Hebrew lingua franca that's even still spoken now in Israel. And more, I'm convinced beyond a doubt that Israel is a black civilization. Having been taken over by the descendants of Esau now, but the secret of
Okay guys, following up with what we discussed about the knowledge of good and evil, the word retov and chin tobu. Now I'm going to show you how, using various derivations, the name from the name tobu or retov, how you have the name Tobias produced from the GUSII language, guys. So here we go. So you have chin tobu, meaning basically good, evil, or vulgar. Now an example of how you can use chin tobu in the GUSII language to mean vulgar would be, you say, an example would be like, when you tell somebody, let him not, let him or her not influence you in his evil or vulgar ways. So then you have the word tobia, and tobia means to make ripe. And then you have, now moving on to the Greek language, where they say Tobias comes from the Greek language, from the word tovia, meaning good. No, did you notice earlier when I had put up there, when I said tobia, to make ripe, and I said tovia? Remember, we don't have V, we have B. So no, that is a Bantu name, tobia, meaning to make good. So Tobias, coming from the Greek language, means good. No, I argue it is Bantu. Tobia, just like we had earlier discussed when I said Tobia. Now, Tobera means to make ripe as well. Now, you have the Hebrew language Tobia, which is really no different from the word Tobia. Again, these are all three words in the Hebrew language, and in the Greek language, in the KISII language, all pronounced basically the same. And then now we move on to the Luganda language, where you have Kitobero. Kitobero is a combination of sumptuous meals that I read that that they feed to children, and you can see that from Saida Karoli's song, Maui Kitobero. Kitobero also means a feast. Now, in the Japanese language, you have taberu. Taberu meaning to eat. Taberu, I argue, comes from the root word tobia, meaning it is ready for use, it is ready for consumption. That's why even in the Japanese language, taberu would be to eat. Now, I argue that also that the Japanese language is also a Bantu language, but those will be slides to come. I'll talk about it. And there's so many aspects of the Japanese language and Chinese language, Mandarin Chinese, I have found that have so many Bantu aspects. But we'll talk about this. Think about it. It's not rocket science. Aristotle and the rest of the Grecian plagiarist thieves went to school in Egypt, and the only condition was to get circumcised. Where do you think they got the name Tobia, to make ripe? They had black Bantu teachers teaching them this. So it's crazy how, even in Western education, they insist on plagiarism, yet a lot of Western education is plagiarized from African teachers. Come on. So then we'll move on to our next slide, and now let's talk about the derivation of the name Satan. Satan has three consonants, which are STN, and comes from the Hebrew word Ivri, meaning an adversary, an opponent, a rival, a challenger, or a foe. Now, just like we already discussed, Sa, means a place, or it means a life force. So Sa comes from the GUSII word ase or se, meaning a place or fire or spirit or life force. So in the GUSII you will say and double set to mean illumination. So this word in some languages like the Yoruba still remains the same, in terms of sort of the same. There's only a phonetic conversion. So then you have Ashe Yoruba and you have Aish Ivri language. Now you have Ivri. Sham also means a place in the Ivri language, meaning there. So the first part of Satan, Sa, would mean a place or a life force. And now the second part of Satan, which comes from the word Atan, meaning Atan or Atana in GUSII, meaning to divide, a divider. Okay, Atana means to divide. Now, when you become enemies with somebody in GUSII language, means you have etanad, meaning etana comes from the concept of to cross, meaning you become enemies. Now, and then you have so when you combine the two, when you combine Atana and Etana, it's basically a derivation of the same thing as Hebrew, an opponent, an adversary, a rival, or it may also mean to pass. Atana means, Etana means to pass, like pass somebody, like miss somebody. So therefore, I argue that the agglutination of the word Satan or Satan or Satani comes from the word sa and atan, to cross each other or to become an adversary or a foe. So in the GUSII will be Satana, even though we don't have the word Satana. Africans, you know, the GUSII language does not have the word for Satan. However, you can say ase owetana. You see that? Ase owetana. And that's what the purpose of having hieroglyphs was. You put in your own what are they called, prepositions or whatever, and suffixes and prefixes, but the root word means the same. So se and atana are all found in the GUSII language. So se atana. See that? The place of division. So the name Satan is an GUSII derivation, believe it or not. So it's pretty exciting. I mean, when you realize what you know, mental slavery can do to somebody. You know, words are right there in front of you, but you don't realize them because you've been brainwashed to believe that the Hebrews were white. So there is no way the language is related to it. So images, white images created an appropriate mental distancing. I say that's evil genius, and that's how you still identify. Okay, so guys, this is really interesting. I'm so excited, you guys. Like, I feel like there is nothing else that can, you know, I don't know what to do. If you cannot believe GUSII is a Hebrew language, I wish I could just, like, I don't know what I can do. There's no other way I can express myself. But let's talk about one of the most fundamental and most important musical instruments in the GUSII language. I mean, we have many instruments, but the most, you know, the most primary and the most important is obokano. Right, guys? Yes. Now, this is King David's harp. Okay, so in the GUSII, we call it's an 8-stringed lyre / harp, and it's called obokano. Now, guess what, you guys? Guess what the name is in the Hebrew language, guys? The name is ubakino. Ubakino, obokano. Ubakino, obokano. Look at that phonetic conversion. There's hardly much of a difference. I mean, there is nothing like the GUSII obokano is King David's lyre. Ubakino. Now, the name Obakino is only mentioned once as a lyre and a harp in the Bible in the book of Genesis 11:27. Then you have Bakinor, which is mentioned in Psalm 33 too. Of course, it would have been Psalm because that was King David's lyre. Okay. Then you have Psalm 49 and verse 4, and you have Psalm 95 verse 8. And then Isaiah 23:16 calls it a kinor. So I don't think it matters, but bottom line is that ubakino, bakino, kinor, obokano. Same name, guys. I don't need no PhD scholar telling me who doesn't speak a Bantu language, not born in Bantu language, but I can tell you that King David's lyre is obokano. Yeah. And that's how you keep mental slavery. So anyway, I argue that King David, the reason why I say this is King David's lyre, and it's not rocket science because they talk about it in the book of Psalm, King David was the 8th born. He was the last born child and he became king. Now, obokano has 8 strings. It would make sense that obokano is King David's lyre. And when Saul would get, when Saul had his mental issues or whatever, when God sent a demon to torment King Saul, King David went over to him and played to him the obokano so that his spirit would come down. But there's something so resonant and so calming about the obokano. It almost makes, sometimes when I listen to it, I almost feel sleepy. It has a very soothing chords, and it's very low. They're very low in the terms. But the most rudimentary obokano, were made from cow tendons. Yeah, they're made from cow tendons. So it's pretty interesting how, we maintained most of our Hebraic heritage. Most of us just didn't know we were Hebrew or are Hebrew, and will never stop being Hebrew. And the Lord's calling us again to go back to the old love, guys. So as GUSII, I argue that, we should start now teaching our children how to play the obokano. And I hope that we will not restrict it only to men. Now, let's look at how the obokano or ubakino, or how the word came about. Now, obokano comes from the word obobokano, meaning a great awakening. Now, the word boka in the GUSII language means to wake up, to break forth, to get up, to become illuminated, to break away from, or a sudden jolt from a previous activity. So the concept of boka is like, if you're sitting and to get up, it's to boka. It's a sudden jolt sometimes, or to break forth from a certain, to break off from a certain kind of monotony. Like when you wake up from sleep, you wake up from a peaceful state to boka, to now being active. Now, the word boka or beke in the Hebrew language has the same meaning. It means to break forth, to split, to cleave, to rip open, to break up, be ready to burst, divide or cut out. Now, when you wake up from a monotonous activity, you break forth from it, you split, you can be split out from it, or you cleave, or you rip open from that, concept of being in that monotone, state. I want to talk about how the name Kwamboka was formed. Now, Kwamboka is a KISII name that means to cross over, okay, as in a bridge or a gulf. And this name was acquired, or rather gained popularity, as the ABAKOSOVA were fleeing Misri, or Egypt. But as they were fleeing, many children picked up those names, because ABAKOSOVA also tend to name based on season or occurrences, or after the living dead. Now, the name Kwamboka means to, it means to cross over. Remember, the name Baka or Beke means to split or break forth or divide. Now, Kwamboka means to cross over because it carries the concept of crossing over between two split places, the Boka or Beke. So you're crossing over the two. So Kwamboka means that you're making a journey between two splits. And that's why, like in the Bible, they say God voka the sea. He split the sea, and the sea split, and it voka. You see that? So vaka or beke, in a nutshell, using the Hebrew language and the GUSII Hebrew language, would mean a sudden awakening, or a breaking forth from a slumber or oppression, or societal mind shift. Yeah, it's a kind of mind shift. So the obokano then serves as a reminder, I believe, of the awakening that God is going to bring to the ABAKOSOVA people, and the crossing over that's about to happen. So in closing, you guys, I hope that you've learned something about the GUSII language and the ABAKOSOVA people. There's still more to come. Stay tuned, do not go anywhere, and remember to subscribe. It is my honest appeal, even in my closing, that ABAKOSOVA leaders grasp onto the little we have left. It is important that we grasp onto the last artifacts that we have of our language. I appeal to the other language. The GUSII language, I feel, is truly in danger of extinction. And now I'm doing a crash course trying to teach my child the GUSII language. So it is important that we as KISII leaders, those who are KISII leaders, push for the studying of the GUSII language and the GUSII language as a classical, biblical language. So I am appealing to ABAKOSOVA leaders that we amalgamate together and do something to push on the GUSII language, because I do believe that GUSII is a language that will face extinction. It is facing extinction. And it is important that we teach our children down to the nitty-gritty of what the GUSII language really is and who we really are. We were of a royal race, and we still are of a royal race. But we'll never be a royal race if we don't wake up and take back our language. In so doing, I leave you with a few words from the book of Jeremiah 31, 9-11. I am a father to Israel. My favorite children, listen to me. You nations nearby or across the sea, I scattered the people of Israel. The ABAKOSOVA people were scattered. God scattered us. But the Lord says, I will gather them again. I will protect them like a shepherd guarding a flock. I will receive them from the enemies who could overpower them. Now, the Lord also says in the book of Isaiah 43, the Lord also says in the book of Isaiah 49:15, can a woman forget her nursing child and have no compassion on the son of her womb? Even these forget, but I will never forget you. And the Lord says He will never forget us. He said He will never forget the ABAKOSOVA people. And that's why I'm here today to let the ABAKOSOVA nation in the world over, wherever you are, the Lord never forgot you as the nation of Israel. Awake now. And I stress this further, with Soli Malango's song, Arise Africa. It's time for Africa to rise up. Rise up, ABAKOSOVA people, and abandon moral, and the Lord will lift us up. Remember that you are of a chosen generation, a chosen race, a royal priesthood, and holy nation, a peculiar people, that ye should shew forth the praises of He who hath called you from the darkness into His marvelous light. And that's 1 Peter 2:9. And that's the message for the Abana who make up the Bayit, Abaito, Abaminto. The Lord never forgot the ABAKOSOVA. The Lord never forgot Israel. And I want to say a special thanks to my spiritual father and mother for being so patient and tolerant in teaching the word of the Lord and sacrificing their time to teach us the Bible. My spiritual mother, Prophetess Mary Jabril, and my dad, Pastor Fatai or Lushola Jabril. I am grateful for them.
Hey guys, you're probably wondering, why isn't that lady sitting in this chair teaching? Well, that's my mom and I'm very proud of it. I just want to send you guys a message. Make sure you comment, like, and subscribe. Comment down below what was your favorite part of this video and like it, because who wouldn't, It's a good video. And also share, because the knowledge that you learned can also help somebody else, maybe like me. You never know. Bye! Oh. Hey guys, you're probably wondering, why isn't that lady sitting in this chair teaching? Well, that's my mom and I'm very proud of it. I just want to send you guys a message. Make sure you comment, like, and subscribe. Comment down below what was your favorite part of this video and like it, because who wouldn't, It's a good video. And also share, because the knowledge that you learned can also help somebody else, maybe like me. You never know. Bye! Oh.